guys, well, let's get our show on the road today. So today is a new topic. It's it's for the month of August. So what we've done, just to bring some of you up to speed, if you haven't been on our webinars, this is a process that we started back at the beginning of COVID last year, and it was something we were doing every week. And what we've done now is just pivot a little bit to allow a different slant on our marketing, to allow us to ramp a little more and hopefully attract more people along to these. So we've really got, what we've done is design a month at a time. So each month has a theme. Last month in July was all about finding your passion. And if you weren't able to be here, but those topics are of interest to you, they're all recorded. They're on our YouTube channel and on our website, so you can still get the benefit of listening to those. Obviously, when you're live, you get the benefit of interacting and hearing it all live, and sharing your perspective as well. This month, the topic is about leadership, and it's whole of life leadership. So not just leadership from a business perspective, but whole of life leadership. And what does that mean, and what does that look like for you? And of course, always coming from a place of ID and being in stride and so on. So the format is that we have today is what we call our living in stride workshop. So that's where it's more me sort of sharing some thoughts with you. And then in 2 weeks' time, we have our ID masterclass. And that's for those of you who are really interested to dive deeper into that group. Everyone's welcome to come. But that's where we actually take the same topic and some of the things that we talk about today, and then with your own perspectives and in some cases, some of your case studies. You might have issues that you want to talk through around that same topic, and we delve into it with the benefit of the brain's trust of that entire masterclass. So that's the format. Those two happen each month, and then when we can, we have a guest speaker come in. Someone that I interview, typically who I consider to be someone doing something game changing in their field. And right now, at the beginning of October, I think that's the 6th and 7th of October, Fran Katsudis, who is the Chief People Officer for Cisco and has been an ID fan and user for 20 plus years, and is now engaging a lot of this in and across Cisco. She's joining us to talk to us about her experience with ID and how she used it in a game-changing sense, and that's going to be a huge experience. Hearing from someone like her is going to be amazing. So if you don't already have that date locked in, you might want to plug in for that one, because that'll be a really a fun interview, but I think it'll be very enlightening. She's not at the top of her game by accident, so I'm sure you'll all, and me too, learn a lot from hearing from Fran. So without further ado, let's get into the topic today on living in whole of life leadership as part of our Living in Stride series. And I just have a couple of slides I'm going to throw up to kick us into play. This is a new format that's been designed by our marketing people for the Living in Stride series. Can you see it? Yep, you can see that okay?
Yes, Paul.
Great, thanks,
Yes.
Ian. All right, so to kick us off, there's just a few principles that I want to share with you around whole of life leadership, and then we'll dig into the actual ID elements of applications as well from an ID perspective. So when you think about whole of life leadership, to me, I've always said that the first metric for me of leadership is followership. That if you don't have anyone following you, you're not really leading. But for all of us in our lives, when we stop and think about it, there are people that are, if we don't even think of them as following us, they're influenced by us, they're impacted by us, they're part of our ecosystem. And when you think about, I love this concept that you don't get what you want in life, you get what you vibrate. And the reality is all of us are already vibrating something, whether we're vibrating abundance, whether we're vibrating fear, whether we're vibrating love, we're vibrating stress. We're all vibrating something. And not only is it that we get what we vibrate, but other people are getting what we vibrate as well. Some people think of it as karma, and they use it in a slightly different way. But I love this concept that, someone said to me, you don't get what you want, you get what you need. And I thought, well, that maybe is true. But I love this idea that, whatever you're putting out there as a vibration is what's going to come back at you as well. And so whole of life leadership for me is about understanding what you're vibrating, and partly understanding it and partly deciding it, doing it with intention. And I would just ask you to, right now, just stop and reflect on what are you vibrating, just as you shape up into today. So for the Australians, you're just kicking off into your day. For the Americans, some of you are at the other end of your day. When you think about where you're at, what are you vibrating? And something will come to your mind. Are you vibrating excitement? Are you vibrating fear? Are you vibrating exhaustion? But what are you vibrating? And is that what you want to be vibrating? Because when you think about the people that have the best lives, that are leading, and whether it's in a business sense or whether they just are the sort of people that seem to have people following them, that have some level of magnetism about them, they're probably not vibrating negative things. They're probably vibrating something that's more positive. And one of the things I've noticed, having worked with and talked to a lot of people like that, is that they normally do it with intention. They don't just accidentally happen to be vibrating what they're doing. It's something they've decided to do. And in some cases, they have little routines that they go through to get to that place. So it's really important for them, for example, how they start their day might be important to them as to what they wear, how they've set their office up, who they talk to first, what meetings they are in and what meetings they are not in. There's a lot of intention to make sure that they protect what they're vibrating, basically. So I would just encourage you to, we talk about the peak performance indicator being a way of identifying whether or not you're in stride. But I think another way of just doing a check-in with yourself is to just ask yourself, what are you vibrating? And then more specifically, what do you want to be vibrating? What is it that you want to be giving off, as if the vibration was the currency of your influence and leadership? What is it you want to stand for? Is it love? Is it energy? Is it, being a visionary? Like or is it just being present? What is it that you would want to vibrate, and then decide to be that? And then you can start to unpack, well, what do I need to do that? What stops me from doing that? With my ID, how might I do that? I think this is a really valuable point first. Anyone have any reaction to that, or anything they particularly want to share, either to add or to maybe, give an example of this?
I could give one, just a simple one. So Angela here in Sydney, in lockdown, week 7. And so at the moment, or as you can see from my ID, I'm pretty big on the use improvise, and I'm missing people. So whilst I've had to put things off, I'm redeveloping, or having someone redevelop my website, and I needed to shoot videos yesterday to go on the landing pages. And I was feeling pretty down on energy, but there was this conscious, I remember getting ready as the camera was counting down, and feeling, I wanted the energy and the positivity to come up through the pores so that it could come out on the screen. And so I think that's an example of choosing, consciously choosing to change the state that you might be forced into, so that you could be the person that you want to be. Great example.
Yeah, I have a lot of people say, well, that person's just born positive, or that person's born as a people person, or they're just really lucky. They seem to, always land in the right place. When I get the chance to work with this, it's never those things. It's always one of conscious intention.
It's a choice, I reckon it is.
Yeah. The more you do it, the maybe the easier it becomes, like so many things in life. But I think this point's really important. Then, of course, if we add to that these other where's my cursor gone? So there's these other points here. I've put them all together because for those of you who are familiar with ID, and most of you have pretty much done your ID, they all relate to your ID. They all relate to the concept of being in stride and being authentic and vulnerable and true to yourself. So this part, what I would add to that we don't normally get into, is actually doing an evaluation of all parts of your life. So, just like we said on the first bullet point about people, are consciously aware of what they're vibrating and do that with intention.
Excuse me, Paul, sorry, we can't see that slide.
Your slides aren't advancing.
What? It's still advancing?
It is not.
No,
it is not advancing.
Ah,
It's on the first, still on, stuck on the first slide.
And it's actually on the, it's not on the slide thingy.
Not on slideshow.
Thank you.
I like yours better.
Not the full picture.
The slide thingy.
try and change that. My apologies. Let me try and change that for you.
I thought it was me.
Nope. Let's...
Now we have peak performance.
So you got that. This is the one I wanted. Where is it here? Let me just put this up. But it's in the wrong presentation mode, isn't it?
Yeah, just put slideshow down at the bottom.
I've done that, Greg.
It doesn't look like it's clicked. It's not
Okay.
clicked.
Better change it.
You might stop sharing and then put in slideshow mode and reshare.
How's that?
No.
No good?
Yes.
Hey.
Okay. And what are you seeing now?
Whole of life leadership.
Okay, you can see. Okay, good. I can see what you can see. That's good.
Yep.
So with this slide, what I'm saying there is those last 4 bullet points all relate to things a lot of us have seen before around your ID. But the part that I would call out differently is looking at all parts of your life from a peak performance point of view. So when normally in these meetings, and we'll say, okay, what's your peak performance score today? Like on that this slide here, when we talk about someone's peak performance score, and the green arrow being that you're really in stride, we'll say, well, what are you today? And someone will say, well, I'm feeling like I'm an 8 or I'm a 7 or whatever your number is. But what people do to really address leadership across all parts of their life is they actually get quite surgical about this evaluation in all parts of their life. So they'll say, well, with my fitness, where am I in terms of being in stride with my fitness? You might also use the concept of the vibration. I'm really only a 4 out of 10 with my fitness. Well, what do I need to do to lead and be the person I want to be there? With my relationship, my significant relationship, what is that? With my children, if you've got several children, you might have a different peak performance score for each of those children. And it's like, well, what do I do to get that in shape? The point here being that people who lead really well across their life, they don't have excellence in one part of their life and mediocrity in another. That doesn't work. That's not authentic. It's just not the way those people roll. So if you truly want to bring the best version of yourself to your life and to all the people around you, it does actually mean that you've got to have a good look holistically. Some people say to us when we coach them, well, I'm like that at work, but I'm not like that at home, or I'm like that at home, not like that at work. I'd never say that if there was someone else in the room. And I'm like, those of us who have experienced that know that that's just rubbish. Like we like to kid ourselves that we maybe are different at home to at work and so on. But when you delve into it, we're the same person. And so if you really want to be good in one area of your life, you've got to also be good in other areas, because basically they say that, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And you could say a similar thing about your life. If there's a part of your life that is really not in a good place, you might think that it's the only part of your life that's compromised. But when you actually get to the other side and get everything in a better place, you look back and think, actually, I didn't realize it was, as off kilter as what it maybe is. So I would encourage those of you who care about bringing the best version of yourself and being really on your game to look across your relationships, your like all relationships. So starting with your significant relationship, then with your children, then with your extended family, and then with your friends, and then there's work colleagues. But it is quite an intentional exercise. It's no different to when people do their goal setting and they talk about, well, I've got goals for my fitness, and I've got goals for my career, and I've got goals financially. It's a similar thing about how you show up to be your best version of self. People do tend to evaluate. And if you think that that's intense or that's a lot of work, I mean, that maybe is why there aren't that many people that get there or that focus on it, because they see it as, it's too hard or it's too complex. It's like, well, which one do you want? It's actually fun. Someone who does think like that, I find it really enjoyable and fulfilling, and it's real. We get one shot at this life. So looking at all of your life and knowing that you then trying to do your best, have the best possible impact across all fronts, I think is a wonderful way to live. So with those slides that I had up there, that's what I would encourage you to think about is, evaluate all parts of your life. And it's not a fast exercise, and it is challenging. It does mean that there will be some people or some situations that you might be nervous about addressing. But whatever you don't, there's a vibration that's coming back at you, from the procrastination or from the fear or the anxiety, and that flows through you to all other parts of your life. We can't, they say that we're 95% subconscious. So for all that we think that we've got some level of control over how we show up, really, there's so much of it that's showing up anyway. And I think being aware of that is the first step. So then what I want to do is dig into ID with you here and just show you, you're familiar with the peak performance indicator, but if I just show you this slide and we think about meeting your needs. So this is like, what do you need to be the best version of yourself? And there are a set of needs. So those of you who have studied ID know that there are like 6 or 7 needs for each direction of your ID. So whether you use or avoid on any drive, there are 6 or 7 needs. But to simplify it, I've found that there are almost some needs more dominant than others. And if you want to think about, is there like a key need, a one? Does it come down to the thing? I would say for the 4 drives, they probably net out like this. And I'm open to discussing this with you. This is my experience of it. For the verifiers, it's all about purpose. I mean, yes, they need to prioritize. Yes, they need feedback. Yes, metrics are valuable. All these other needs that we have as well. But if they don't have a purpose, they're pretty much not coming. So when you think about leading, whether this is, again, career or whether it's family, sport, your fitness and your health, money and getting your financial wealth, if you don't have an underlying deeper purpose to what you're doing, it's going to be really hard to be at your best and show up with any form of leadership in terms of vibrating the right energy that you consider successful and positive. So purpose. For the authenticators, I've found picture. I mean, without a clear picture, it's just hard to get going. And when the picture is clear, your action and your motivation is compelling, and your level of influence over other people is compelling. And so, again, breaking down all parts of your life, you go, okay, do I have a clear picture for the marriage that I want to be in and have? Do I have a clear picture for, the way I want to live with my children and how I see our family evolving over time? Do I have a clear picture for wealth and what I want for financial security, for friendships and how I live them? And then once you've got that out as to what your clear picture, think of it like a vision board, which is very powerful for authenticators. How is today compared to that picture? And, what do you need to do to then have your aspired picture, desired picture become your reality? But it's all about the clear picture. For the completers, it's all about the plan. So if you've also got a verified drive and an authenticate drive and a complete drive, you're going to need the purpose and the picture and then put it all into a plan. There are a lot of people as completers will say, I don't care what the plan is. I just need a plan. Someone give me a plan. Please tell me what you want me to do. Give me a plan. They're probably not the verifiers that want to sort of be precise on them. They just want a plan. They don't need to have developed it themselves necessarily. But working through a plan, ticking that thing off, seeing progress, building up the momentum, it's just impossible to do that if you don't have an underlying plan. So the plan is everything to the completers. And so again, the wealth plan, the health plan, the family plan, the relationship plan, the career plan. And if you have a plan and it's not on track, that will be a source of fear and anxiety and concern to you. And then finally, for the improvisers, put the promise. I was really tempted to put the dream, but dream didn't start with P, and they all seem to be starting with P. So I just thought I'd put in the promise. But I think it does really resonate, because there's a lot of improvisers that say, you know, dream can sound a little superficial, but the whole thing with an improviser is, and of course they thrive on the dream, but the promise of the dream, you know, and the promise of like making something possible, that really is as motivating as all get out for the improvisers. So to just simplify, and I'd be really interested to just, for the benefit of this group, you know, when you see that and you think about your ID, does it resonate with you, or do you feel maybe there's a different fundamental driver that relates to your strongest drive here? And I'm just doing the 4 drives, not the 8 directions.
I thought, Paul, I thought the P for promise and improvise, I thought the P for possibility was enormously strong too.
Okay.
Just seeing that everything's possible. So that's the second P maybe, but I probably saw that in front of the promise really.
More prominent. Okay.
But very good. The whole picture is really good. The whole thing.
Thank you.
I was just thinking, Paul, I just actually wrote a note to Greg saying my business name, mind your P's. It just keeps getting reinforced all the time because of all these P's. I love it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anyone else have a reaction about the other drives?
Hi, Paul. For me, yes, that was perfect. The purpose and the plan for the verify and the complete. Yeah, that's all I need. Why I'm doing something, what is it I'm trying to achieve, and give me a plan, and ticking things off my list and seeing that progress is perfect. So yeah, very good.
Good. Good. So the point here with these is to really just take those keywords and sort of apply them to each part of your life and go, okay, do I have a purpose for all that I'm doing, you know? And or the picture, the plan, the promise, or see the possibility. I actually like possibility because it does fit with the concept of the dream, you know. And I can see all the other strong improvisers all nodding, so that looks to me.
I would say, Paul,
Oh.
sorry, Paul, I was just going to say the purpose, for me, how I authenticate, 7 and authenticate, I mean, the purpose is something that's really important for me though as well. And I speak a lot to my clients about purpose and tying it to that. So for me, if I'm clear on where I'm going and what I'm doing, to me, the purpose is my picture. So this is where we can start getting a bit overlapping. But yeah, I guess I am very, very visual though. So the picture is incredibly important to me too. And I like possibility better than promise because it's open. It makes it far more open and far more, gives us plenty more options.
There you go. There you go. That's really good. And you're right. You know what you're calling the picture might be someone else's purpose and vice versa, you know. So there are times when people use the words interchangeably, like you might use the word purpose, Joe, even though you're an avoid verifier, and someone says, well, what do you mean by purpose? And when you explain it, you actually mean picture, or you describe it with a picture, you know. So it doesn't, you can help an authenticator have purpose by giving them a clear picture, you know. That's how they get there. But that's just so, and once it's there, my God, their ability to take action, it's immediate, and it's, you know, it's full on. They're all completely in.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned
the
about
emotion comes in. Sorry,
go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm glad you mentioned about the vision board. I do a lot of vision board workshops, and I do them one-on-one sometime with clients. And sometimes clients are like in tears because this is exactly the thing. And I never would have associated that with, so now I have to go back and take a look and see, are they all, you know, use authenticates? Because I wouldn't have even made that connection. But there are other people who are like, this is great. And there's some people who are just floored by the experience. Now I know why.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. Someone else was going to share something?
Yes, Paul, I was. With the promise for the improvise, I relate to that more from a personal perspective in terms of the challenge that I make for myself, and then also the promise that I make to myself to follow through, which is a vulnerability, and then the promise that I make to myself in terms of aligning myself to the challenge, whatever the challenge is. So possibility is like the bigger, an even bigger picture, but the promise is more about how I'm operating in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going back and forth with as well, because whatever you feel that you've really, can't move from, you've made the promise, you've made the commitment, then you've got something to improvise against type thing. You know what I mean? But it was the promise invokes the action, because it's often the yes. I've said, yes, I'm going to do it. That's the promise. And then that's what provokes the improvisation. So that's what I was torn between what I was thinking of as the dream, like the possibility of it all, and then the promise that invokes it, so
yes.
Yeah, maybe it's both. I was just trying to give it like a simple model here, so that when people want to pull apart their life and evaluate and say, okay, well, how do I have a more whole of life approach? We want it to be as simple a pathway as possible. And I thought this sort of mechanism might provide that. And then what I want to do from here was to say, well, what might be the things that trip us up, and keep that really simplified as well. And in that case, I've got that for all 8 directions to sort of give you some things to think about. That's where I was going to go next.
So Paul, can I just check in? So the four key words you're talking about those are the ones in your view that were probably likely to resonate with our strongest drives. Is that correct? Yes. Given that you've got 4 rather than 8.
Yes, and I found that even interesting myself. I didn't have them coming up for the avoid drives, and so I was like, okay, is that just because there are 4 drives, and then there's the 8 directions? So maybe there's just a fundamental motivation that's just inherent in each drive, and then how we execute them comes into the 8, But what we need, I'm questioning that myself. But I didn't have anything coming up that was in the same sort of, had the same power around it. And I know some people think, well, if you come up with the, one direction, you've got to come up with the other direction. But I think that's maybe more to do with once you start to take action, as opposed to just the most fundamental of, motivation. I mean, there are just the 4 drives. So, and I don't want to do something just to be theoretical about it. I mean, I just didn't have anything else coming up. And I'm saying from me, but I'm saying from, my discussions with people and experience over the years, I don't see that. I'm open to it. Oh, great.
Yeah, here's something for that. I'm wondering how to use this. Like, one of the things that drives me is, what does it do? What does it do? What does it do? So I can't picture it being working, and I can imagine it would be great exercise to just pick someone and go through this and do the areas of your life you're talking about. And like, if I was using Authenticate, like, how do I picture my finances, or picture my family, or picture, and then once I get that ideal, I think this is creating the ideal. Then we go to, okay, what's getting in the way of each of those areas? So is that what you're suggesting? You go, yes. Everyone looks for their purpose if they're verify. Yeah, I think the more you go through examples, that we probably will later, that's when it'll start to land for a lot of people as well.
That's in the masterclass, Greg. That's when we will unpack and get a bit deeper in some of those things. I used to, years and years ago, I used to run this session. It was a half day. I called it a personal synergy connection, and I was actually quite surprised, because I felt like at the time I was charging a lot for it, and it was a half day one-on-one, but it was to do exactly what we're talking about here, which was to sit down with people and say, okay, based on your ID, let's look at each area of your life and how to get those in stride. And for me, it was very intense. I mean, I was like full on for the 4 hours, but they were magnificent sessions. And it probably is something like that. Like when I said before, it's a lot of work and it's intense. I mean, that was moving pretty quickly. So I think there is a lot of work to get there, but it's incredibly fulfilling if you get all parts of your life lined up like that. So yes, we will dig in, and that's what the masterclass is about, is to sort of take the principles that we cover in the Living in Stride series, and then unpack them and get into some of the use cases with each of you, so you can see it come to life. But that's exactly the exercise. And some of you might like to do that between now and 2 weeks' time, is to sort of go through and take these tools here, the matrices, and the next couple I'm going to show you around, what trips you up. And then say, okay, if this is what I need at the moment, the purpose, the plan, the picture, the promise, or the possibilities, and then look at what's tripping me up. Start doing that work. It'd be really interesting to see what you uncover, even where you go to first. Like where's the area that needs most attention? It may not be where you're spending most of your time right now. You might say, really the thing that's a big distraction to me that occupies a lot of my time, it's one of my children, or it's a health issue. Or it's a friend that a conversation I keep putting off and I wonder why, but maybe as a verifier, I don't see the purpose to it. There needs to be a different purpose. What would be a purpose that would get that resolved? What's the purpose that's fulfilling right now by me not taking action? There must be something in it. But this just gives you some clues to where to look.
Paul, can I ask a question real quick? This is Laura.
Sure, Laura.
I'm a avoid, improvise, lowest you can go. And when I think about possibility and promise, I shrink. I don't trust, and it kind of almost scares me because I just don't think it's possible. Does that kind of coincide with, the one?
Totally. I mean, and it's really interesting to hear your language. Like I love hearing how people talk when they're coming from that place. Like, you're absolutely right. When you are in stride, the language you use and the feeling you'll have is one of expansion and of confidence and courage, like the expanded emotions. And when you are being pulled out of stride, which for you as someone driven in the opposite direction, you're going to have the feeling that is the opposite. So instead of expanding, you are going to feel shrinking, and that you're shrinking and being diminished or constrained, and the fear and the anxiety will come in. So that's exactly right that you would feel that.
Thank you.
Similarly, when you're talking, just use one next door to you, the plan for a completer. When an avoid complete person, if there was someone who was a 1 or 2 incomplete, hearing the word plan, they would have a similar allergic reaction to that. If someone was going to say, you've got to follow the plan, they'd be thinking, oh my God, that would just be like, the word they often use is, I would feel trapped. I would feel that I'm suffocating. I immediately have to break out of that, because that's so against what they stand for. Let's talk about
Paul,
that.
Can I make a comment?
Philip, go.
Yeah. So I like the simplicity of this slide, and it connects with my ID. But here's kind of my concern with it as well, right? Like, if somebody is kind of an avoid in something in one of these areas, I mean, like me, like I'm in kind of avoid and improvise, like on the lower side. I mean, does it really mean that I don't have possibility or promise? I mean, it can keep people where they are, right? Because it reinforces something that you don't want to reinforce.
So they're great questions. It's of course not that you don't have possibility or promise. It's what drives you. What drives you towards possibility, what drives you towards promise in your case is a clear picture. If you don't have the clear picture, then you might be feeling like there's no possibility, and I don't know that there's any promise, but it would all come back for you as a strong authenticator. It would come back to not having a clear picture. So just always remember with ID, it's about drive. What's driving you, not what you see, not what the behavior is. That's the behavior, but where's it coming from? What's driving that? And,
Got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I shouldn't see this as outcomes, but the drive behind that will lead to the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. Let's talk about, I thought of these as like your kryptonite. What are the things, and again, although there are lots of vulnerabilities, what are the things that trip up each ID? And And these are personal. Like, these are the things that are like preoccupying a person if you've got this drive, and that really stop you from, well, to use Laura's phrase, you know, they shrink you and they cause you to get distracted and have the negative vibrations, rather than being the person you would be if you were fully in stride and coming from that place of, you know, purpose, picture, plan, and possibility. So shoulds for verifiers, because everything's meant to be right. And when it doesn't go right, whatever right is, then it shouldn't be like that. And so if ever you hit, or not if, as a verifier, those of you who are verifiers, when you hear yourself using the word should, that's a trigger that, you know, you're being pulled out of stride, and you're probably being too hard on yourself. So if you come from a place that life happens the way it's meant to be happening, like life is perfect, which is something I believe in, there are times when life plays out the way I was expecting, and therefore that the should lines up then, right? So that's an easy tick. But there's plenty of times in life where life plays out very differently to what I might have thought was the right way for things to go. That doesn't mean life's wrong. That means maybe my perspective was wrong. But whatever you have this gap of what should and shouldn't have happened, it just causes frustration. And from a vibration point of view, it's going to be one of diminishing rather than expansion. And I hear it in conversations all the time with verifiers about, well, you know, but they should have. Ian, I remember a conversation with you a couple of days ago, and we were talking, and you were like, but Paul, I shouldn't have to do that, you know, or I should. And it's like, I hear myself say it as a strong vero, and you go, okay, who said should? Who said it should be that way? You know, but the point is, it is. And the more as a verifier we come to grips with that, the more at peace we'll be, and the more our vibration is in place. So I'm giving it to you as a trigger to use when you hear yourself think it or use that word. Catch yourself. There's something in that you can correct and see differently, adjust your perspective, and get to a more in stride place and vibrate more positive energy. The opposite so the avoid verify is around judgment. It's sort of linked, because should is all about judgment. And when an avoid verify person feels a sense of judgment, that's going to pull you out of stride and affect what you're vibrating. So anywhere where you feel that, and the judgment isn't always a verbal criticism. A judgment is in the language that you use. And I'd actually ask, because I'm a verifier, so I think I'd be kinder to you avoid verify, so that you maybe explain it. Because the sense of judgment runs much deeper than those of us who are verifiers even realize at times. You know, even taking time to think something through can be seen by an avoid verifier as judgment. But I'd ask those of you who are familiar with this, maybe have an example you can mention for the benefit of the group on what judgment can be to you, or when you've even felt that, when someone else maybe didn't realize that they were, you know, the space or the conversation was one of judgment from your perspective.
Yes, Paul, I've got one that's just happened to me recently at scale here. I did an exam a couple of weeks ago, which should have taken 3.5 hours, and it took 8.5 hours because the computers didn't work, and the way that we had to get guidance, they didn't know what they were doing. So I lodged a complaint, and the way my complaint was dealt with was I was told that it was my computer system that was the problem, and not the people at the other end who were not very competent. And that judgment of my computer system, and I'd paid somebody to make sure it complied with all the rules they'd set out, that has really got me quite irritated, angry, and because I was judged. I wasn't asked, I was judged. Obviously, it's your computer system that's at fault. And I'm still processing it and writing a letter back to them. And it was so strong.
Well, even as you started talking, Gail, I thought the judgment can't judgment that's even positive be a negative for an avoid verifier? Like, even if someone says to you that was, boy, you finished that exam in really quick time, you know, which they think they're giving you a compliment. But isn't there also a judgment around that that can land awkwardly for the Void Verify?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, it's other people assuming something about you that they don't know, I think, and that's the judgment, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's that whole judgment. Anyway, for me, and I'm only a 4. I wonder what it's like for a 2.
Yeah. So as a 3, if somebody said to me, this is Patricia, why you finished that really fast? I would think, holy shit, how did I do it wrong? Did I miss something? Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Look, this is where it was eye-opening for me as a verifier was, oh my God, I thought I was giving them praise. I thought I was giving them encouragement. And you're actually through that judgment, and you don't even think of it as judgment. No. You're actually invoking something that could be a negative experience for that person. It's interesting, isn't it?
And what's interesting, though, is we come out swinging really quickly, or I do, I should say. So, and I think Ian's the one who told me this is my best, because he has, I think, a child, the best defense is a good offense. So if someone were to say that to me, I would probably come back with a smart ass comment. Like when my husband says to me, what was in that salad dressing you made? And my comment to him is, why? I make it all the time. Instead of saying, you know, when all he was going to tell me was, oh, it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can just see so many things coming from that. Like as an avoid verify, you make assumptions, you know, really, but depending on where you're at, if you're in a place where you're vibrating something negative, the assumptions are more likely to be negative. Like if you're vibrating suspicion or fear or anxiety, it's likely to be a negative assumption. Whereas if you were in a really healthy, positive place, the assumptions you make would be much more, you know, expanded and encouraging and positive.
You know, I think, Paul, sometimes, sorry, as I say, I think that sometimes comes from the fact that those of us that are aware that we can be too accepting at times. And I know I sometimes think, oh, I should have asked another question, or I should have asked more questions because I'm so accepting, and that's where my judgment comes in. And it's probably my judgment of myself more than anything. It's like, damn, I should have asked more questions, or I should have dug deeper in that, because that's where I see that I can fall over at times, and somebody will bring something up and I'll think, why didn't I even think of that, or whatever, and it's because I didn't even think to ask the question because I was too busy going, yeah, you're right. Right. So I think that's where some of that can come from, for me anyway.
Thank you.
So I if people on my team are avoid verify, if I ask them questions, because I always like to be certain or inspect what I expect, sometimes it can be taken as I don't trust what they're doing, which really isn't the case. It's just to make myself feel better.
That's true. That's true, Cheryl. I know there's many
to relieve my own anxiety. To me. Yeah.
But even just explaining that to people is really helpful. There's a lot of people who felt that, you know, lack of trust when they put their own perspective on it. And once you say to them, this isn't about you, this is about me. I know so many people have said, oh, that changes it completely now, you know, because I can see that it's not directed at me. It's just something you want from me. Let's move on, guys, just to make sure we cover this for you for this today. So when you think about the authenticators, ambiguities and perception. So, you know, I was looking at this thinking, well, is it incongruency? It's whenever things aren't clear, you know, for the authenticator, that's what will trip them up. And that's everything from someone saying one thing and doing another, you know, where it can be words, it can be words, people, it's just, but it all boils down to fogginess somehow, you know, it's just not clear. When the picture's clear, we're good. So anything less than that, let's just call that the ambiguities. I don't know, Greg, whether as a strong authenticator, you can see a better word than that, that's more appropriate. But it's in that realm. Yeah,
let me play with it while we keep talking.
Okay.
Well, hang on, I'll answer it right now. I'm not sure what you mean.
For the avoid authenticators, it's all about what other people think, you know. So perceptions are the driver, and whether that is what you think or whether it's what others think, what you want to reflect on is who are you concerned about and their thoughts. Like, is it your husband or partner, like wife, partner? Is it kids? Is it a certain friend? Is it your boss? Is it what people are going to think when they, you know, find out about your wealth? Like what is it that you're thinking about what other people think? Who are they and what are the thoughts? And that can get blown out of all proportion. I know so many people that are, it comes across as an insecurity, but what it is an incredibly strong focus on what other people are thinking. So who are they and what are they? And if you are wanting to really get on your game and have that whole of life leadership so that you're vibrating the best possible version of yourself, doing a little stock take on who are the people that I care about their thoughts, you know, like it matters most to me about what these people think and what is it that they think and what's the delta and what I need to do about that. That's a massive source of motivation to an avoid authenticator. That's why I put perceptions there. Angela, you look like you're ready to say something.
Just reminded me of something I read a wee while ago. I think a lot of people are familiar with Brené Brown, and she talks about how there's a post-it note theory, or that's what I've called it, where the people who count, whose opinions count in any overall lifespan, should be able to fit on a post-it note and fit in your pocket. So if you remember that these are the people that are most important, because that's definitely one that I've been conscious of and have tried to learn to let go of that. Like what other people think of me is none of my business. But the post-it note thing, who really matters, is the thing that really helps me stay grounded with that one.
Well, what's really incredible about this particular point is it's all in your own mind. I mean, whilst we worry about what other people think, they're not actually thinking what we think they're thinking, you know? And when they are thinking it, they're thinking it for like 1% of the time, nothing like what we think they are. So it's something that can become an incredible burden for avoid authenticators that's completely unfounded and can really destroy your life if you don't realize, you know, this is where the self-awareness of this is so powerful. For me, as a one in authenticate, I mean, it was a massive, like a switch got flicked on for me years ago when I realized what matters to me most is what I think of me, not what everyone else thinks of me. And I just put my focus there, and it was like liberating as all hell. And, you know, that was game changing for me to truly let go of what everyone else thinks and just have what I know is right by me in the mirror, you know.
That's where the values work is really important. My daughter's a void, and she's in the teenage years when you're most sensitive to other people's opinions of you, and trying to help her to understand that the amount of time you think about yourself is what everyone else is doing as well. So it's okay. They're not really thinking about you, but you're just hypersensitive that they would be. But yeah, I agree. Total. It's freedom when you can stay in that space. Thank you.
Paul, from what you said, it's that move from an external locus of control to an internal one. And so it's all about, it's not what other people think of me, it's what do I think of me. And it just becomes so important when you make that move. And when you're a teenager, it's the external. And then as you grow, or hopefully you grow, it becomes the internal one.
Yes. Yes, well said, Gail. That's exactly it. Let's.
Well, can I just one quick word on that? I see a lot of people that feel really upset and aggressive, or get defensive or whatever, and a lot of it is because they've let themselves down more than anything. But until they actually recognise that they've let themselves down and the importance of that, they can't move forward. So it's really, really, really interesting that.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Thank you. All right, guys, so on the complete drive, when you think about what really trips up the completers is when things are changing. For people that thrive on having a plan, it's when the plan's changing you know, and the degree of change and the frequency of the change is what's going to throw you out, you know, and affect your everything, you know. I mean, because a change, obviously being a completer, a change in one part of your world affects every other part of your world, you know. No one else understands that because they don't know what the bigger plan is. That makes it even worse, you know, because then you're dealing with it all on your own. You don't want to be on your own. You want to be part of the team, you know. So change is really, it really is like a kryptonite. And so again, how much of that is what you're seeing as a change when really it's just because it wasn't your plan, but it was life's plan, you know. I mean, if someone came to you and said, oh, on the way to the airport today, you're actually going to get a flat tire, so leave 20 minutes earlier, or just know that you're going to miss that flight, and it's just a furphy, you're not really catching that plane today. I mean, if someone told you all that, firstly, you'd probably say, well, I don't want to know my life that well, you know, like I want life to have adventure in it. I don't, and then we get upset when the plan plays that differently to our plan. And I found that the completers that tend to be able to navigate life best are the ones who, firstly, there's an acceptance that, well, the plan is only ever like a draft plan, really. I'm doing it until life has something a bit different. And then the sooner I adjust to accommodate life's plan and get on track with that, the better it is. So they're not as invested into their plan. They're almost doing that with one eye open on what life's got happening as well. And then when life shows something different, they just jump on board with that one and get back on track. So they don't even see the change as change. They see it as, I don't know the right word to use, but it's almost like a little, you know, a warning signal, or a, you know, just a trigger to say, hey, you need to make an adjustment here and just get back on track. And then it doesn't have the stress involved and the catastrophe of, you know, my whole life's a mess, or my whole day's a mess, and they lose the whole day, the whole relationship, you know. Everything comes to a halt when you see it blown out of all proportion, which is the vulnerability of a completer. So I think being aware of change and how change as one thing can have such an impact, but then how you can see change differently so that it doesn't trip you up as much, is where the completer's energy needs to go to have better leadership across all of their life.
I think mindfulness focus helps with that.
Hey, Alan, good to see you.
What's up, buddy? But I think practicing mindfulness of today and tomorrow, anything is possible, and most things are in continuous flux. That's something I had to deal with and get over.
Right.
But it's interesting, Paul, because I mean, you and I have talked in the past about mine overall, but since I've been in this new position, some of my, I don't know, they're inherent defaults, but some of the way I handle things now have changed just because of what I have to do in running an organization, right? So
good on you. Thanks, Alan. And then, of course, with the avoid drive, you know, I put the word predictability. I could just as easily put the word expectations, because expectations block the room for pioneering and the creativity that comes. An avoid complete doesn't want a plan. They don't want boundaries. They don't want confinement. They want the freedom to just go with where it feels they should go. So expectations or predictability, I'm curious to know what might, or maybe there's a different word, what comes up for those of you who are strongest in that drive.
Constraints or conformity is another one that comes up for me. Don't tell me how to do it. Just tell me what the outcome is and let me find my own way there.
Yeah.
You couldn't even say with my two examples. You had to come up with something different. It's right there.
Exactly.
I actually agree with you, Ange. Constraints is the thing for me. It's like, don't try and constrain me and tell me what to do. Exactly the same. I just leave me to it.
Okay. It's like an automatic rebel aspect. If you tell me what to do, even if I want to do it, I no longer want to do it. It's weird.
The word trap.
Isn't it? It's amazing how powerful it is in you, isn't it? It's crazy. Okay, Greg.
I'm just saying it's a sense of trapped. If you mean trapped by that, then and constraint, then yeah, because we instantly go. But Paul, here's the thing: as soon as you put one word there, we're all going yeah. Yeah. It's like, Don't tell me what to do.
We'll just leave that one blank.
I wonder whether it's conformity rather than predictability, because if you've got a procedure or whatever that you have to follow and it's in a high level of detail, that's predictable, I guess. But the expectation that you'll follow it to the letter to complete it is like a nightmare.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
I think the other word in there that's really strong for me is consistency. Why does it have to be consistent? So, I mean, consistencies, I can understand the importance of consistency, but hey, that's for everybody else. It's not for me.
Well, if you were, it all comes back. I think the word is constraint, you know, because when I hear you say that, you're really reacting because you feel constrained by that.
Yeah.
Where consistency is a form of freedom, you would not have a problem with conformity, you know. So, okay. And then just the last one for the improvised drive is negativity is just a killer for anything you think of as, it's so paralyzing. Like when you'll hear improvisers say it sucks the life out of me, it really is like someone turning a switch off and you just can't function, whatever it is you determine to be negative, you know. And it may not be something that's negative to anyone else. You might think just, you know, going to pick up somebody, you might think, oh, so negative going, you know, that because where I've got to drive to or how long it's going to take or the traffic. Someone else could think, God, it's a beautiful day out there. You're driving out in the sunshine, it'd be beautiful. It's whatever you attach to it that makes it negative in your mind will just completely change your energy and change the way you vibrate everywhere. So if you took a phone call then while you're driving to that, you know, destination, and it's not what you want to be doing, the whole way you're going to come across in that call is affected by that vibration. So I think, again, it's really powerful to say, if you are an improviser, where is the negativity in my life? Like, what is it? Where is it from? Where does it pop up? And what can I do to convert how I approach that, or maybe get rid of it? Because it's such a shrinking, paralyzing effect on your life. And for the avoid improvisers, it's, you know, all about pressure. I was actually going to put decisions, because I know so many decisions when you've got to make a decision, and there's so many decisions in life. What am I going to wear? What am I going to say? Do I speak up? You know, like all of those decisions, not just big decisions like buying cars, houses, changing jobs, getting married. They're the big obvious decisions, but there's actually thousands of decisions every day. But I think what's underlying that, a bit like we said about conformity and constraint, it's when you feel a sense of pressure from those decisions. When the decision in itself is something that you feel certain about, there's no problem with that decision. So it's more this whole thing of where the pressure is going to come from. And I think it's really interesting for you to then analyze your life. Where do I feel pressure? Is it from certain people? Is it from certain situations? Is it from certain thoughts I have in myself? Like when I put the word pressure on the table, where does my mind go to with that? And how do you start to unpack that? Because making progress in that space is you know, attacking the kryptonite that's affecting the way you vibrate through life. So I know we're out of time. There's a high level at you know, what can both motivate you and completely demotivate you and suppress you and affect the way you show up in life. And what I would encourage you to do is, if you want to unpack this in more depth and talk about some actual, you know, how do I do this? And maybe some of you will have already done it and can share your journey with the team. That's what our ID Masterclass will be all about 2 weeks from now. Hopefully we get to see you then. And please encourage others around you. If you've got people that you're working with or living with that you think could benefit from this, please encourage them to come. As you know, there's no strings attached. This is just purely to try and help more people live more true to themselves and get the best out of their lives. Have a great day, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, Paul. Good session.
Thank you.